and it's Energumen opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile novices. Energumen by a...
And the warmest of welcomes to a very special edition of the Champ.ie podcast. You might notice I'm in a different background to usual. The reason for that is I can say welcome to Liverpool, welcome to Aintree, and welcome to the home of the world's greatest steeplechase, the Grand National. Now a matter of hours away, 5:15 on Saturday. The eyes of the nation and indeed many parts of the world will be on this corner of Merseyside at its most welcoming, as I can vouch for, but nonetheless offering a real challenge in trying to sort out the winner of the greatest steeplechase in the world. First one back in the 1830s by a horse called Lottery, which is really all you need to know. And the 2 winners of the lottery tickets to be on this programme tonight are the famous and legendary member of the Irish field, just back, they tell me, from Paris. I'm surprised they let him out, Ronan Groome. And a man who's never been to Paris and probably will never be allowed in. They complete the 2 wise men, which is quite enough for anybody this week, ahead of the Randox Grand National. So the scene is set. We had a couple of non-runners come through on Thursday morning, and that means that Eclairsurf and Fortescue get into the race as numbers 39 and 40. And so what it means is that whichever one of you picks a horse, you've got 39 reasons why you're on the wrong one. It's one of those, isn't it? Numerically, the strongest Irish challenge, I think, almost ever. But the Brits feeling that maybe the Irish aren't sure which their best horse is. But with the likes of Any Second Now, who was 3rd last year, 8 from Gordon Elliott, 4 from William Mullins, including last year's 4th Barrow Saint, maybe there is strength in depth. Okay, pick that lot of pieces, Ronan. Where do we start with a race like this?
Where do we start? Yeah, it's a great race. It's great to get stuck into. It's everyone wants to back the winner of it, obviously, and everyone's asking you for your tip. Just go through a few of them at the top, Mike, while we're here. Look, Snow Leopardess, I think, is going to go off clear favourite. She's by far, the people's horse. I think this year she's the one everyone's latched on to. She's great. She's a mare. She's got a good name. She's got a great backstory. I think she'll go off clear favourite. I'm not sure whether she'll completely stay the trip myself, but I wouldn't put anyone off her. Delta Work is one at the top I couldn't really latch on to. I just think the soft ground probably worked for him at Cheltenham. I'm not sure if a quicker surface would suit him, and he's been left on the same mark, even though he beat Tiger Roll there. Any second now, I wouldn't put anyone off him. He was third in the race last year. He probably would have won if that horse that fell in front of him fell the other way. He fell right into his path, out of many times his path, and caused him, significant interference there. Has to have a big chance any second now. The one I like, my number one hope, and I have 3 backed for the race, but I backed Fiddler on the Roof at 25s when the weights came out. I'd still back him now at around 16-1. I think he's crying out for this trip. I think he's a real strong stayer. Go back to the Ladbrokes Trophy earlier in the year. I really fancied him for that. They were talking about going for the Betfair Chase prior to that race. Decided to go down the handicap route. The pair of them pulled 28 lengths clear of the third there in the Ladbrokes Trophy. Him and the Cloudy Glen. And the more I look at that, it seems to me like a freak performance from the winner there, like a Western Warhorse type performance in the Arkle, because he's done nothing since. And Fiddler on the Roof, stayed on really strongly. And I don't know what was up with the winner that day, but he pulled out the performance of his life. Loved his comeback, Fiddler on the Roof in Ascot. They decided to keep him for this Grand National then. He ran second there in the Swindley Chase to Fortescue, who's one I give a good chance in this race as well. That should put him cherry ripe for this race. He's real consistent star. He was running really well last season in novice chases against good novice chasers when Tizards couldn't buy a winner. I just really like this Fiddler on the Roof. I think he's really strong stayer. Off a mark of 155, he's £2 well in officially as well. Got loads of scope to improve further as well. This is fourth start of the season. 8-year-old. I think he just has loads going from. The other one I like towards the top of the market, Mike, is Eclairsurf. Everyone can see his form is really, really good, really rock solid. Obviously, he beat Jericho Rock and Cork Rambler in the Classic Chase. They finished first and second in the Ultima, and then he was beaten like Just Win My Wings at the Eider Chase. That form's took a hell of an upgrade since with the way she won at Scottish National last week. She's £5, or he's £4 well, and officially you could probably put another £4 or £5 on that off a mark of. He's officially 147 now. Can run off 143 here. Look, just really rock solid. He'll be up in the van the whole way. I think that's the way you need to be in the National these days. I don't think you can be held up. So I just think he's really rock solid around 14-1. And one at a wild price I'll throw in. Going down the field, I like Discoram. I think he could be cherry ripe this year. I think they've got him correct by giving him an extra run. I think he just ran out of petrol last season. I think he'll be fitter this year, and he'll improve for having run well in the race last time. Ran well last day at Fairyhouse behind full-time score, and has been trained for the race all season by Paul Nolan. That's a one around 40-1 mark, but I do like my front two of the market at Eclair Surf and Fiddler on the Roof.
Eclair, of course, won the Warwick Classic back in January, a race that won for Arthur. Won the year he went on to win the National. So it does have previous, even though Eclair Surf only got in at the 11th hour. Barry, McManus has a squad. Chicken's have an even bigger squad. It's a battalion coming from Ireland, but does it have a winner in it?
Well, we're going to give the Tricast, Mike Vince. Great to be back. Great to be back on the channel. It's been a while, so... great to be back on a Thursday night.
Just mention, as we may, of course, we'll be hearing from Emma Lavelle a little bit later, who now has two runners in the race in the Rasher counter with Adam Wedge. And interestingly, his stable jockey, Tom Bellamy, is going to ride Eclair Surf just as he did at Warwick. You were saying?
Yeah, Mike, the first thing Ronan Groome said there was, let's talk about the horses at the top of the market. That's something I don't want to do because I'm going down to the first 4 or 5, 6 even in the betting, and I'm just, there's not one of them is jumping off the page at me in terms of interest for a bet in this race. And I'm going to give you 3 biggish price horses that I like, and let's see, can we get the Tricast up on the Champ.ie podcast? Let's start with the shortest price of the 3, and it's a horse that has finished second 6 of the last 7 times, and he's a horse, Mike, I've always loved with a view to the Aintree National. Running at Cheltenham in the National Hunt Chase. Look, whether that's ideal heading for the National, I'm not entirely sure. Run Wild Fred ran into Statler, however. And Statler is a horse, as we, on the last episode on the channel, I mentioned Statler is a horse that I think could make up into a Gold Cup challenger next year. I think he's a class horse, and Run Wild Fred was going into the National Hunt Chase like a horse that was going to take all the beating. I just love the way this horse jumps and travels. He's so non-complicated. He gets the shoulder 11 stone 7 here. Davy Russell will, I'm not sure if he will creep away. He'll probably be handy. I could see this horse really taking to the fences. I don't think the weight is going to be an issue. I think he'll run really, really well. And who knows, he could pay all his fans back for all those seconds by landing this one. 22-1, I think, is a big old price about Run Wild Fred, considering, I suppose, who's shorter than him in the betting. So he's on the short list. I think he'll run very well. And like he's only had 11 runs over fences. So Rona mentioned about horses and scope to improve. This horse going up in trip over the entry fences, he's definitely of interest. A horse that gave us one of our better days on the Champ.ie podcast since we started this all these years ago. The Rasher counter, Mike Vince. Rona mentioned Eclair Surf. We'll be hearing from Emma Lavelle. But the Rasher counter, a galloping flat track like Aintree. The last time this horse won was off a similar mark, off 149 in the Hennessy. This horse is really interesting. He carries a lovely racing weight here. 10 stone 2. Tom Bellamy up has had a prep at Newbury when finishing. I suppose, look, he wasn't really put into the race. It was a comeback run. He had a bit of time off the track, but back down to a mark of 149. This horse is really, really interesting, and he hasn't had he hasn't had a whole pile of mileage either. 10-year-old with only 10 runs over fences. Again, I think this horse has, scope to potentially improve, go up and trip again. Adam Wedge takes the ride on the Rasher Counter. And the other one is a horse I've always liked and one, he surprised me this season. Is a horse trained by Kim Bailey, is 2 for Gold. The horse is 40-1 in the betting, and I think he might be underestimated. Again, only 13 runs over fences. Has only had 3 runs this season, but was really interesting the way he won, the way he ran, I suppose, at Ascot back in trip. This horse, for me, has always been crying out for a trip. Winning, I suppose, against Dashel Drasher. He surprised me at Lingfield. I suppose the sharp track at Lingfield. I think this horse needs an extended trip. He jumps well, and he's a horse I think could see run a big race. That's 2 for Gold. So they'd be my 3. If you're asking me to put them in order, we'll go the Rasher Counter to win, Run Wild Fred to be up there, run a big race, and two for Growth to finish 3rd. So that's my Tricast, Mike Vince, in the National. All big prices.
So Emma Lavelle, of course, is saddling bacon and eclairs. She obviously, the food ration will be very much to the fore. It's interesting, neither of you have mentioned any second now who finished last year in 3rd place, and neither of you have mentioned last year's winner, Minella Times. I just think that the weight's gone against Minella Times. He was chucked in last year. I think he's got it very tough this. I'm going to throw one more into the mix here, to the extent that I really did like the way Longhouse Poet won the Thyestes, which is a race that does have previous in terms of the National.
What do you need to win the National, Mike?
Sorry?
What do you need to win? What do you need to have to win a National? What attributes?
Well, you need to have more skill and ability than your 39 rivals, and you also need to be on decent terms with Lady Luck. I just think Martin Brazel, of course, who won it with number 6 Valverde, has got this horse spot on. He was not cited in the Boyne Hurdle. Well, he wouldn't be the first one not to be cited in the Boyne Hurdle through the years. And I'm going to put him up, Longhouse Poet. I totally agree with Ronan about Fiddler on the Roof. I keep wanting to kind of Fiddler on the Hoof for some reason. And if he were to go in the ground and his best form's on softer ground, I wouldn't be ruling out Daryl Jacob here, because he won on Neptune Collonges, the tightest Grand National finish ever 10 years ago. Good Boy Bobby's his ride, a horse that won the Roland Merrick at Wetherby at Christmas. And I think he's another one that could go well, but it could all change if for some reason Commodore were to get in the race. His first reserve, he would go straight into my Tricast.
What's the Tricast, Mike?
I am going to put up Longhouse Poet to win from Good Boy Bobby and any second now. And those are my 3.
Ronan Groome?
I'm going Fiddler on the Roof from Eclair Surf and Discorama.
So it's very interesting as well that no one's mentioned the Scalia 10. Just gives you an illustration as to how many realistic prospects there are for national success at about 5:30 on Saturday. It is the classic case of whatever you think will win, there are 39 good reasons why you're on the wrong one. Let's look at the rest of the Aintree card shortly, but let us now hear from Emma Lavelle talking to Barry. 2 runners in the race for Emma in the shape of the Rasher Counter, and also now safely into the race, and fascinatingly so, is Eclair Surf.
Delighted to welcome on to the Champ.ie podcast ahead of Grand National weekend, Emma Lavelle. Emma, it's an exciting weekend. I believe you're in the car en route.
I am. I've just left and just heading up north now.
And it must be an exciting weekend. 2 runners in the Grand National, and the most important thing, Eclair Surf gets in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a little bit nail-biting over the last week or so as to whether he would or wouldn't get in. But he has, and it is exciting. He's got a good profile for the race. And we sort of said to ourselves, he's only 8, so if he doesn't get in, he's got plenty of time. But I think we're happy that we are there.
Yeah, and just looking at, I suppose, the 2 runners, obviously we'll cover the Rasher Counter as well. But Eclair Surf, I suppose, look, he's had 9 runs so far. He's I suppose he put up a monster performance at Warwick back in January. He's got up, I suppose, in the weight since. But how have you assessed his season, and I suppose how do you assess his chances on Saturday?
So he hasn't had loads of experience. He's only getting better. His form is very much on an upward trajectory. He was very impressive his first tried an extended distance in the classic chase at Warwick. And he then, running in the Ida over 4 1/4, was clearly a very good test and pointed to the national. And the form of only giving £10 to win my wings and being beaten a length of 3/4, and then seeing what she did in the Scottish National was very impressive. I think he's a horse prefers probably the wrong word, acts very well on very soft ground. He showed at Newcastle that he handles much better ground, which is good. But I think soft to the ground the better for him, just because it inconveniences others. So the Grand National, good start. I think it will be fine. I think, but it's definitely softer would have been better. But he's a horse that's just learning all the time. He used to be a horse that would always throw in 2 or 3 slightly scary jumps, and now the slightly scary jumps are getting less and less. So he's learning, and it'll be a big test for him, but we know he'll stay the distance, and he's a horse that just loves to gallop.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I suppose looking at the attributes that you need to win a Grand National, Emma, he likes to be, is a key to him, I suppose, to be ridden forward, and he's obviously proven stamina and jumps well.
Yeah, and I think it isn't so much even the key to him if he has to be ridden forward. He makes that decision. Tom is very much a passenger in the first mile. He's a horse that once he's jumped off, there's no talking to him. He's going at his gallop, and that's quite a good gallop. So if things are going faster than him, they're probably going too fast, because he just sets off in that rhythm, and that's the pace he likes to go. And I think that's right. I mean, it used to be that you could ride and win a national from off the pace. It now has become, whether that's because of the quality of the race, I'm not sure, but it has become a race where you're definitely in a much better position for winning it if you're prominent in the early part.
Yeah, so exciting with Eat Clear Surf, but the Rasher counter, a Hennessy winner, back off the same mark as when he won his Hennessy.
Yeah, and he's got a bit of class before, and it was obviously a big day when we won, and at that stage, that again was he was an 8-year-old, and I just thought maybe the national had come a year too soon for him that year, and the reality is he then picked up an injury, and so the decision was made for us. He's had time off, but the national was always the race that we were aiming him for. In the last 18 months, his prep has just been about this day. So he had a lot of sort of rehab, lots of trotting up hills in Wales. Actually, sort of looked after and done by Adam Wedge and his partner Lawrence. So it's rather nice that Adam's actually going to ride him in the Grand National. He had a super prep run in the Denman Chase at Newbury. Ran a lovely travel jump, did everything that you'd want, and then just got tired at the back of the second lap. He's come on in leaps and bounds since then, and touch wood has been excellent. So yeah, I'd certainly be excited about his chances. The only thing he's unproven over is the distance.
Yeah, and I suppose it's interesting. You mentioned, I suppose, his injury. What was his injury, Emma?
He had a tendon injury, so that's what kept him off the track.
We must mention Paisley Park. because I believe the plan is what a credible effort again in the Stayers Hurdle, and I believe you're planning to hit Erin's Isle.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just the most amazing horse that's been in it. An extraordinary horse for us. But winning the Cleeve for a third time was brilliant. The way he did it. Danny Mullins gave Glory force of the most fantastic ride in the stairs. He just stacked them up coming down the hill, and the thing that paid me is that once he's rolling, he needs to keep rolling. So all he was doing was staying on, but it was all too late. He's come out of the stayers in great shape, and Aintree doesn't suit him. It's just too sharp for him, and they can always keep getting away from him. Whereas Town seems a more logical place to go to with him. So, really, really looking forward to bringing him back to Ireland and see how we go.
When was the last time you were in Punchestown?
What was the last? I don't think I've had a runner at Punchestown for 50 years. Actually, I'm trying to think back. Bluesborough probably, and that was a while ago. We did have a runner there again.
Versus 40-1 in the betting, and I think he might be underestimated. Again, only 13 runs over fences. Has only had 3 runs this season, but it was really interesting the way he won, the way he ran, I suppose, at Ascot back in trip. This horse, for me, has always been crying out for a trip. Winning, I suppose, against Dashel Drasher. He surprised me at Lingfield. I suppose the sharp track at Lingfield. I think this horse needs an extended trip. He jumps well. And he's a horse I think could see run a big race. That's 2 for gold. So they'd be my 3. If you're asking me to put them in order, we'll go the Rasher counter to win, Run Wild Fred to be up there, run a big race, and two for gold to finish 3rd. So that's my Tricast, Mike Vince, in the National. All big prices.
So Emma Lavelle, of course, is saddling bacon and eclairs. She obviously, the food ration will be very much to the fore. It's interesting, neither of you have mentioned any second now who finished last year in 3rd place, and neither of you have mentioned last year's winner, Minella Times. I just think that the weight's gone against Minella Times. He was chucked in last year. I think he's got it very tough this. I'm going to throw one more into the mix here, to the extent that I really did like the way Longhouse Poet won the Thyestes, which is a race that does have previous in terms of the National. But
what do you need to win the National, Mike?
Sorry?
What do you need to win? What do you need to have to win a National? What attributes?
Well, you need to have more skill and ability than your 39 rivals, and you also need to be on decent terms with Lady Luck. I just think Martin Brazel, of course, who won it with number 6 Valverde, has got this horse spot on. He was not cited in the Boyne Hurdle. Well, he wouldn't be the first one not to be cited in the Boyne Hurdle through the years. And I'm going to put him up, Longhouse Poet. I totally agree with Ronan about Fiddler on the Roof. I keep wanting to kind of Fiddler on the Hoof for some reason. And if he were to go in the ground and his best form's on softer ground, I wouldn't be ruling out Daryl Jacob here, because he won on Neptune Collonges, the tightest Grand National finish ever 10 years ago. Good Boy Bobby's his ride, a horse that won the Roland Merrick at Wetherby at Christmas. And I think he's another one that could go well, but it could all change if for some reason Commodore were to get in the race. His first reserve, he would go straight into my Tricast.
What's the Tricast, Mike?
I am going to put up Longhouse Poet to win from Good Boy Bobby and any second now. And those are my 3.
Ronan Groome?
I'm going Fiddler on the Roof from Eclair Surf and Discorama.
So it's very interesting as well that no one's mentioned the Scalia 10. Just gives you an illustration as to how many realistic prospects there are for national success at about 5:30 on Saturday. It is the classic case of whatever you think will win. There are 39 good reasons why you're on the wrong one. Let's look at the rest of the Aintree card shortly. But let us now hear from Emma Lavelle talking to Barry. 2 runners in the race for Emma in the shape of the Rasher counter and also now safely into the race, and fascinatingly so, is Eclair Surf. All right, there's your break. And on we go.
Excellent.
So that's some fascinating thoughts from Emma Lavelle. She's one of the hardest working trainers I know. Of course, her husband, Barry Fenton, rides a lot of them out. And I'm sure he'll be anything but a quiet accomplice. And it could be their big day. We will see. What about the rest of the Aintree card? Some really good sport. A 22-runner handicap, which is not for the faint-hearted to open the card. But we're going to talk about graded races and start with the Grade 1 Betway Mersey Novices at 225. This over 2.5 miles. One here that is badly unexposed. We don't know enough about it, namely Walking on Air. The likely favourite you would think would be Three Stripe Life for Gordon Elliott and Davy Russell, but he suffers from an acute attack of seconditis. And also the skeleton horse with the weight allowance, LA Bell, another one that many people will see on the shortlist. Ronan, this is a good race.
Yeah, it's a good race. Three Stripe Life, I think, Mike. I just thought he'd be a bit shorter in the betting. He's 5-2 there. The horse you mentioned, Nicky Henderson's Walking on Air, got the breeding and got the impressive win first time out, and it's got the owners as well, owned by the Tabors. But I can't have him. I can't get him near 7-2 here. The time he clocked first time out wasn't great either. He's only had the one run. Three Stripe Life, you know, he's got the second-itis, as you say, Mike, but he's got some good seconds, you know, and particularly the form with Sir Gerhard, who I think everyone rates really highly as one of the best novices around this season. And he was closing right up on him again at Cheltenham. I thought he was booked for second anyway before the Bromhead horse fell Journey With Me. That just sets a really, really rock-solid standard here. And in behind him, I thought it was much just on the British side anyway. Nell's Son was interesting, I thought, for Nicky Richards, potentially improving for 2.5 miles. So he stayed on really well to beat North Lodge up at Kelso. I didn't think there should be a discrepancy in price as there was there. I know North Lodge was given weight away that day, but I think this Nell's Son could improve for 2.5 miles. And the other Irish horse is Colonel Mustard, who was third behind Three Stripe Life at Leopardstown, but ran very well in the County Hurdle, was third there. Whereas Hood, first time out for Lorna Fowler, and a big day for Conor Orr, who has a big ride in the National as well, on Enjoy Dalan. So wish him the best of luck. I think Colonel Mustard got run well. But 5-2 about Three Stripe Life, thought that was generous enough, Mike.
Colonel Mustard, you know, I think of it was Colonel Mustard in the study with the lead piping straight out of Cluedo. Are you into, do you like your mustard, Barry?
No, and I don't like Three Stripe Life either. Certainly with a view to this race. He's a good horse. Be interesting to see what to do with Three Stripe Life next year, because I think he is the best horse in the race, but I actually disagree with Ronan. I think he potentially, he's probably too short at his current odds. The race, I wouldn't be backing anything that came out of that race, the Ballymore, after such a short turnaround. It looked to me like a bit of a grueler. I mean, the horse that was coming to the second last was actually down at the last hurdle. Henry's horse, Journey With Me, was absolutely legless. And Sir Gerhard to win that race the way he did, I just thought it was a grueler. Three Stripe Life was staying on the best at the end, but it would just worry with the short turnaround. And I think you are right in what you say, that this race it's competitive. There's plenty in here that, you know, have potential. You've mentioned Walking on Air. Could be anything in here. Colonel Mustard wouldn't be for me. Stage Star didn't perform in the Ballymore. North Lodge is a horse. I loved his debut win at Aintree over course and distance. He impressed me, and he went and backed it up at Cheltenham. It was a messy sort of a race. He took out the last hurdle. And I thought on both of those starts, he showed a really good attitude. I was quite surprised he got beaten at Kelso. As Ron said, he was giving weight away. He is a course winner. I think this horse has more to come from North Lodge. I do like him. And there's a bit of support from him as well. He's 10-1 for Alan King and Adrian Heskin. Obviously, the connection with the McNeils there. So he's definitely of interest. But the one I've come down on in here, and the best price I think you can get on her now is 17-2. You mentioned Emma Lavelle. This horse is really interesting, going up and trip again. She's a horse I've liked all year. I was disappointed that they skipped Cheltenham with her, because I would have made her a huge player for the Mayor's Novice. She's had 4 runs. She's coming here fresh. Again, she's a course winner. But given the Mayor's allowance, it puts her right in the picture. You would have to think. The only thing I would say, I think she'll have to settle a bit better. She'll get a good pace here. There'll be a pace on in the race. So I think she'll be able to settle better and go up and trip. I think it will suit her. So she's my play in here, Mike. But against the Fav, I think he's too short.
So I suppose you're going to ask me what I think here.
Yeah,
I'm fascinated by the Alan King pair. North Lodge and also Harbour Lake, who was unluckily brought down. I think they might be good each way bets in this. They both represent Alan King. Let's move on.
Mike, before you move on, I want to be a part of that as well. I'm going to row in. I'm going to play 2 each way against the field. Give me North Lodge as well. I'm not letting you in on that one alone.
Okay. No, the reason I want to move on is because we're talking Alan King, and clearly the Poundland Maghull, which is the Grade 1 novice chase over 2 miles, which comes up at 3:00 on Saturday, is all about Edward Stone, who I thought did it very nicely in the Arkle, stepping up from his beloved Warwick, and he was a decisive and deserved winner. Agree or disagree, Mr. Groome?
I agree, Mike. And in short, I think he'll win here. I think he was an underrated winner of the Arkle, and particularly going into the race, I would put my hand up and say I underrated him going into the race. I just thought one of the Irish horses would beat him. Maybe that was a bit of Irish bias in hindsight. I just thought one of them would prove too good for him, but he fairly dotted up there. Considering
he proved us all around, didn't he?
Yeah, big time. Because he considering early in the race, he was badly hampered. By a faller in front of him, and he still came through, and won quite decisively, to be honest. I don't see why he should get beaten here. Maybe you could say he's had a long season, something like that. That often happens at Aintree, but it's not a good enough reason to really oppose them. So it's either, I think, Edward Stone, it's either you're with him or against it, or you don't play the race. I probably wouldn't play the race, but Edward Stone looks rock solid to me. I think he's head and shoulders above Gentleman than me here, who's, he's been impressive enough in Ireland, recorded a couple of nice times, but hasn't really done it at the top level yet. Gentleman to me, bit of a hypey horse, and this is a kind of acid test for him. So I expect Edward Stone to come out on top.
Barry?
I fully agree. There's an argument to be said that this horse should be long odds on for this. I think Ronan's completely right in what he says, that badly hampered and was bumped at the last as well. So to go and win the way he did. The interesting thing, he's an 8-year-old, and there was a lot made of that going into the Arkle. But he's quite lightly raced. So this horse could go on and improve a lot more than what he's even shown already. He's clearly improved majorly for a fence. Hands up as well to all the British listeners. Completely underestimated him going into Cheltenham, and he's one of the. I think of all the horses that the winners at Cheltenham, he'd probably be on the short list for the best performances of the festival, or certainly the most underrated performances even coming out of it. I thought what he done was very good. Snap.
That's all I've got to say on the race. Let's look at the Liverpool Hurdle. Tyne Hill won it last year. It was the first week of Tom O'Brien's position as stable jockey to Philip Hobbs, but he had to battle pretty hard. And all eyes here are going to be on Flooring Porter and that charming young Danny Mullins. Although, might this track suit Champ? A few musings from me, but the main musings that I want to hear from Ronan Groome.
Flooring Porter was good at Cheltenham.
Got a cracking ride, didn't he?
He got a brilliant ride, Mike, and that's kind of what I'm just looking at, really. It's not sustainable for for people to expect that sort of ride every time and expect them to just do it. Like that's the point with Flooring Porter. He got a brilliant ride. Danny stacked them up at the top of the hill, and he managed them brilliantly in the straight, just holding them a ring. It was great horsemanship to keep him straight and keep him going forward when the horse clearly wanted to duck. Duck a certain direction, and Danny just managed to keep him going. I'm not sure he can get away with that every time, and this is a new challenge for him at Aintree. And I think the race is interesting through the inclusion of Ashdale Bob, who will possibly go up and hassle him. And I'm just thinking other jockeys just won't let Danny Mullins get away with that again. It will be alive to the fact that he controlled the race at Cheltenham and perhaps go up and hassle him or do something different. And I just can see him getting beaten here, Flooring Porter. I think there's two solid options in behind him there in Time Hill and Champ, and I just edged towards Time Hill. He won the race last season. You showed a really good attitude. Look, people were talking about going into this Stairs Hurdle that there was all, was full of loopers, the likes of Willie's Horse Classical Dream and Flooring Porter and all these kind of inconsistent horses. But Time Hill is not an inconsistent horse. He ran badly once in France, but for the last 2-3 seasons, he's been really, really rock solid. He always gives his running. Perhaps not as much as like Champ, you could suggest. He's not the most consistent, not as consistent as Time Hill anyway. And obviously he's a course distance winner, won this race last season as a defending champ. I think you just know what you get with Time Hill. You know he's going to run a really strong race, and perhaps he'll just get the better of Flooring Porter this time in a differently run race. He could be the one to be on, so he'd be getting a marginal vote from me.
I'm going to say the question surely is the founder of Champ.ie. Does he or does he not go with Champ? By the way, while I think of it, now is a very good time to go to that button marked subscribe. If you want to hear more of this week in, week out.
Make racing great again. Hit the red button, subscribe.
These guys are listening to the mother-in-law, I know, which I'd rather do. But subscribe now, and things will go forward. There's lots of plans afoot, I will say no more. Let's have as many of you as possible as subscribers to this amazing production that we somehow cobble together. There are other words, week in, week out. All right, are you with Champ here or are you with Barry?
I've missed you, Mike Vince. I've missed you, lads. It's a national hunt season. We'll be back though for Fair, yes, and we'll be back for Punchestown on big plans in the pipeline. Myself and the Golden Groom. We might even take each other on again in the Road to Cheltenham Challenge. He's dying to get one back at me. But anyway.
That's the best failure to answer a question.
No, I'm not with Champ. I'm not with Champ whatsoever.
You keep thinking that if you talk that sort of nonsense long enough that I won't come back at you and ask the question again. Yeah, so, no, Mike. Are you with Champ or are you not with Champ?
No, I'm not with Champ. Myself and Champ fell out of love a long time ago. That's the horse, that is. Flooring Porter, he's worth taking on at this sort of price. Mike Vince, you're talking about the ride at Cheltenham. The horse, for me, his best performances have been at Cheltenham. He's won at Navan. Obviously, going left-handed is key to the horse, and getting a lead. So he got all that at Cheltenham. He was a really good price at Cheltenham, but 7-4 is a bit skimpy here to be. I suppose we know about his temperament. So to take into consideration that, and to be piling at this sort of price, especially when you have, as Ronan said, Tyne Hill, winner of this race last year, ran a very respectable race, and this could be a lot different in here. At the prices, and people are probably going to think I'm mad for this one of all the things they've said to me, but Ashdale Bob, I think he can mark up his performance in the Coral Cup. He's a horse I've liked for a long, long time. It didn't work out over fences for him. He's some really good novice form. He's rated 152. So on ratings, he obviously has to improve quite a bit. But his performance in the Coral Cup, as I said, I think it could be one that you could, really mark up. It was on the Wednesday, so the ground was certainly on the softer side. But he was up there in the van for a long time in the race, was quite free. Over 2 miles 4 furlong. I love the way he travelled. I love the way he's improved for every run this season. He ran a good race at Gorham Park. Again, it was on softer ground in the Galmoy Hurdle. Then went on to finish second behind Devil's Coachman at Navan, again over 2.5 miles. And obviously the Curl Cup 2.5 miles. So he steps back up and trip again. I just think he's interesting. 11-1, Robbie Power up. There's plenty in here that I wouldn't have a whole lot of confidence in. And I think the favourite is too short. So each way play for me, Ashdale Bob. Could be more to come from him over hurdles.
Well, I think the truck will suit Tyne Hill, and that'll do for me. We've got a right handicap here, haven't we? The last race we're going to spotlight before I ask the two guys for their 5 casts. I'm going to get treatment for a severely twisted arm and probably put a 5 cast up myself, or I'll never hear the end of it. This 4:15, 3.25 mile handicap chase, which is of course the last race before the national. And here we have Shan Blue, who was running away with the Charlie Hall back in Wetherby in October, when falling went well clear and slamming the likes of Surname. Now 11 stone 5 and 7 pounds off top weight in a handicap. Again, you do have the access to a pin if you want one. It might be quite useful, Ronan, mightn't it?
It's a good race, Mike. Good race. Good 3 mile handicap. You make a case for a lot of them. Shamblu's at the top of the market, and I think he's worth taking on here. I just cannot for the life of me see the reason why they ran him against Allaho in the Ryanair, especially when he has a mark of 148, which you could have suggested should be 158 after the way he ran at in the Charlie Hall. He was going to hack up there, and obviously he's fallen so early, or he's fallen 2 fences out, that the handicapper couldn't move his rating up. So you've got a really, really well handicapped horse, and you ran him against possibly, one of the most impressive Ryanair winners ever, and he just couldn't last it out in a Grade 1. They've come back here to try and take advantage of the mark, but I'm not sure if they've spoiled him here a bit, because he's a horse that has good record fresh, as he was showing at Wetherby, and he's won fresh before. I just wondered that sort of prep trying to run against Allaho over the 2.5 at Cheltenham, just not ideal. And I just don't get the campaign in it at all. As you've mentioned before, Mike, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but do you know the situation with Commodore? As in, I know he's first reserve for the national. Do you know the situation there? When did they find out? Can he run the national?
Let us just clarify the reserve, and he is first reserve. It is 1 o'clock on Friday. It isn't the Irish system. It's 1 o'clock on Friday, and if no horse of the 40 comes out by 1 o'clock on Friday, then Commodore doesn't get in the national. End of story. No matter what may happen, if something wakes up lame on Saturday morning, it's too late to bring a reserve in.
Sure. Okay. I get that makes sense.
Now you're better informed, aren't you? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But I'm a big fan of him, Commodore. I backed him for the Kinmuir Cheltenham. It didn't run there. I've been waiting for him to run all season. He hacked up earlier in the season at Cheltenham. I think it was the November meeting there. He beat Mr. Fog Patches. He beat Santini there, and he beat another horse. His name has escaped me now. They've all won and ran very well since. Mr. Fog Patches is a good standard of horse in Ireland.
Mr. Fog Patches.
He's run well in big Irish handicap chases. The Courtmaster was the horse in third, has won since, and Santini has run really well since in a Cotswold chase. And Commodore absolutely hammered them all in that race by 15 lengths. He won really easy. I thought he was a lovely type for the Kinmuir off of mark of 142. He was in that race, but they decided to take him out. They've maybe kept him for the national. Maybe they were hoping to get into national off that mark. He was always going to be borderline, and obviously he is still borderline. He might get in. If he got into the national, I'd probably back him for that as well. But if he gets in here, I see he's a double figure price still. That looks a big price to me. He's a horse that goes well fresh, and he's a horse that I'm pretty sure they've kept him all season for one of these big spring targets. And if he can get out in the lead, I think he could take all the beating here for Venetia Williams and Charlie Deutsch, who, needless to say, have had an absolutely sensational season. So Commodore would be mine here if he does run.
Okay, Barry.
Shan Blue could be absolutely thrown in here. So I disagree with Ronan Groome. Not for the first time. Won't be the last time.
You can't have that campaign in though. What were they doing in the Ryanair?
Well, the interesting thing is, what way does Shan Blue like to be ridden?
Well, I think the one thing you just said about this race is there'll be so much pace that they'll be up in court on Monday on speeding charges, won't they?
Well, that is true, but he was held up last time, so I'm not entirely sure. Even though he ran, I'm not entirely sure he had, as hard a race as than by looking at, I suppose, the bare form, like obviously finishing sixth in a Grade 1. I can see him run a big race here. 148, as Ronan said, the handicapper couldn't touch him. He was going to absolutely hack up. Off 148, this horse I believe he is a Grade 1 horse in a handicap, and could be absolutely thrown in here. That's my view on it. So he's been hammered in the bet, and I'm not surprised if someone's looking for one at a bigger sort of a price. In the 5 cast, I will put up Chamblou. I think there's probably still juice in his price. I think that I see 3-1 still available on him as we're recording. I can see him going off shorter than that. But the one at a bigger price that I do like, and it's probably worth a bet each way, Killer Kane is getting it together slowly but surely. He's a horse that's always, promised a lot. The Tizzards obviously target Aintree. The horse has only had 5 runs over fences this season, so he's obviously, this is his first season over fences. First time with the tongue strap on at Kempton, he delivered. Dropped back in trip at Sandown, tongue strap on again, he delivered. He's a horse that I think, look, if you were to tell the Tizzards that this horse would end up a 131 rated chaser 2 seasons ago, I'm not sure they would have believed that one. So I think there's a big, Ronan mentioned big spring handicaps. This horse could run run a very big race, I think at 14-1. The ground will be fine for him. Ex point-to-point winner, will stay the trip. He's getting it together. Donica Doyle, ex point-to-point winner. Killer Kane, big price, 14-1. But Chamblou, I think will take the world of beating in here.
I will chuck one in the hope that the weather forecasters have not got this totally wrong and go Adrimel each way. I think you can forget his last run. In a couple of decent wins in the previous 2 races might just give him an opportunity.
Killer Kane, 10 stone 2, by the way, as well.
Aintree card
10 stone 2
for Saturday with a 1:45 start, and we end with a bumper at a Grade 2 bumper at 6:20. So it's going to be a long old day for those of us that are working it, but you really wouldn't want to be anywhere else on the planet than involved at Aintree on the day of the world's greatest steeplechase. It is as simple as that. So let us turn to the 2 guys. I'm going to have the last word and put mine in a minute. I'm looking for 5 casts. But what we'll do is we'll go to all 3 of us and do them race by race. Okay? So let us start with the 2:25 race at Aintree, the Betway Mersey Novices Hurdle. Barry, give us the first winner.
LA Bell.
Ronan?
3 Stripe Life.
And I'll go Walking on Air. I'm not going to do the Maghull because I'm going to put into the 5 cast. Well, the Maghull is a race that's available to you if you want it for your 5th part of this 5 cast. The Liverpool Hurdle, the JRL Group Liverpool Hurdle at 3:35. Ronan.
Time Hill.
Barry.
Take a chance. Ashdale Bob.
I am Tyne Hill as well. The Betway Handicap Chase, the 4:15, the last race before the National. Sadly, in past years, the Ruby Walsh was injured. Here's Chase. Ronan.
Commodore.
And if he doesn't go because he goes in the National?
I'll go with Espoir de Rome.
Sorry, say that again.
Espoir de Rome. Espoir de Tale, the 12 horse, yes?
No, sorry, Espoir de Rome, the top horse, number 1.
So we've got to watch our Espoirs here. 2 Espoirs. Make sure you get the right hope. Espoir de Rome, the top weight. Let's go to Barry for this one.
Second top weight, Champ Blue.
And I will go Adramel. Grand National, Ronan.
Fiddler on the Roof.
Barry.
Oh, go on then. Barasher counters back.
And I'm Longhouse Poet, which leaves you with the widest of berths to go in with your fifth horse. Ronan?
Yeah, going to the first race, Mike. The 3 mile handicap hurdle there. I like the way you're thinking for Gavin Cromwell and Mark Walsh. Go back and watch his run in the Martin Pipe. He was a huge eye catcher. Hampered by a fall early in the race. Got stopped a couple of times running through. Ran on a 40-1, only beaten 9 1/4 lengths by Banbridge. Thought it was a big run off an 81-day break. As I said, he was like 40-1 shot that day. So a real eye catcher. I think he could be really interesting up and trip here at a price. I like the way you're thinking in the 145.
Well, hopefully all our subscribers, and if you aren't one, please remember to subscribe now. We'll also like the way that Mr. Groome is thinking. Here's someone who never likes the way Mr. Groome is thinking. What's your fifth horse?
I certainly don't, because I'm going to put one up in the bumper. He doesn't like bumpers either. What a fucking miserable man.
And what is your horse in the bumper?
It's a horse, Mike, like myself. Cruise Control. Tom Lacey, 25-1. Stick it in.
And I'm going
He's
to
got the horn back for Tom Lacey.
I'm really upset, Ronan, because I'm going to go remastered in the opening race at 145. I think his hurdle mark is way below his steeplechase mark. And David Pipe is in great form, having had 3 winners on Thursday. Well, anyway, there's plenty of horses to avoid in that little lot. But far more important, it is the weekend. Everybody wants to get involved. It is the Randox Grand National, 5:15 on Saturday afternoon. There'll be no atmosphere in the world to compare with that at Aintree. Packed house, which is the best news of all. Strong Irish hopes, and the Brits really believing for once they can get their own back on the Irish, who of course is smouldering, having had a dead heater with a British horse demoted on the first day that Pied Piper bring the horse involved. Well, next week it will be all eyes on Fairy House on the Big Easter Festival at the County Meath track, featuring the Ball Sports Irish National, which is on Easter Monday. So plenty of time to get your eggs out and to work out what might win that. And then, of course, we've got Punchestown coming up at the end of the month. What a week that is, because that's Punchestown, the end of the Jumps Week season, at the same time as it is the 2,000 and 1,000 guineas at Newmarket. So that's when Flat Meat jump head on. And the Champ.ie team will be musing on all of that lot in the weeks that lie ahead. And do please remember to subscribe. Not difficult. SUBSCRIBE. Subscribe.
But we're trying to get to 2,000 subs, Mike. That's the big.
Well, exactly. I mean,
it's going to make racing really good. And
he's concerned. Is Doyle? He needs a holiday, and he thinks if we get to 2,000, then he can get
Mrs. Doyle wants the holiday, Mike. She's putting the pressure on.
Exactly. But the trouble is, it does help if you want a holiday if you actually tip a winner or two.
It's on the dream board along with the.
Speaking of which, Groome, how was your holiday? Enough of that. Thanks so much, and a big thank you to Emma Lavelle. Great to have Emma on board as our special guest on Champ.ie. And
Mike,
by no means impossible that Emma might be the winning trainer in the Grand National. What is it this time?
I was just going to say, all the listeners, more merchandise provided by Davy Boland. He's not even on the show tonight. He'll be on next week. In the comments, put your 5-cast, because we're going to get this going. And, you know, those who land the 5-cast, so the 4 feature races and the wild card, put it in. Let us know. We want to read through them. Same as the Road to Cheltenham Challenge. We want to see what your selections are every week on the podcast.
And if you want to have a good laugh, we will put Barry's 5-cast in the comments as well. And one of these days...
Hadn't played that one in a while. Ronan Groome was absolutely horrified.
Especially after the watershed. One of these days, we'll actually invite one lucky podcast winner onto the programme. But that's it. From here at Aintree, we're counting the hours down to the National and across the water in Ireland. We're expecting another bad day at the office for the Brits. It'll all happen at 5:15 on Saturday. Have a good week and the very best of luck.
Come on, the fiddler.
Inside the final 150 yards, this is a special pair, and it's a hands full of grace. And it's Energumen opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile novices. Energumen by